studying the Joseph narrative. Now, when I say Genesis, what kind of things come to mind when you hear the word Genesis? Creation. Noah. The beginning. Giants for some of you. Okay. Okay, thank you. Joseph's story. Cain and Abel. Events. Sorry, got that. Just correct me each time. Cain and Abel. Abraham. Jacob. Forefathers. Babel. 12 sons, right? How many would think of creation, Noah, Abraham before you'd think maybe Joseph? Yeah. When I say Joseph, what comes to mind?
Dreamcoat.
Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? Shocking. We had a wonderful experience at Jim's family cabin last spring break watching that Technicolor Dreamcoat. So, it's funny that, like Jonah, if you say Jonah, you think about whale. You know, if I say Joseph, you think about the special coat, right? You think about Genesis, you think about all these other narratives, but Joseph itself actually is the longest narrative in all of Genesis. It covers from chapter 37 to 50. All these other ones are jam-packed before that. So when we look, there's a lot in the Joseph narrative that we get to see, that we get to unpack, that goes way beyond a coat, right? But in order to do that, we have to have a background. So the way I want to approach this is I want to approach it like, you know what? You decided you're going to start reading the Bible. It's 2023. You want to get into it. And so you started reading, and you're going to start in the Joseph narrative. If you came to the Joseph narrative, Joseph event, Joseph whatever, cycle, remember the Bibles that we have today were not written in chapter verse form. They were written in scrolls at different periods of time. The chapters and verses were added much later. So they were written in cycles. Genesis, you'll have the Abraham cycle, you'll have the Jacob cycle, and you'll know, depending on how it's structured, whether the next chapter or the next cycle begins. You'll see that at the beginning of the Joseph narrative in Genesis chapter 37. Many of you will have heard this before. It starts with Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan, and then this is the beginning of the next chapter. These are the generations of Jacob. How many times do you read? These are the generations of so-and-so. These are the generations of so-and-so. This is the author's way of going, hey, chapter 2, chapter 3, right? Because the very next line says what? Anybody have their Bibles open? Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy of... So where's the generations? Do what? It's a good question. You'd have to go to the previous chapter to read. But this is exactly where you'll start to see. You can begin to see, like, okay, this is the next section. We're starting the next section. But in order to read this next section, we need to have a background. We have to have an understanding of, like, what the point of this whole Genesis scroll here, what it's trying to get us to see. Right? So in order to do that, I want to talk real quick about, I gave a list last class about a couple different things to be on the lookout. Does anybody remember any of the things that you should look out for when you're reading, especially in the Hebrew Bible?
Repeated words.
Yes. Okay. Repetition, repeated words, right?
Incredibly vague or overly detailed.
By the way, I'm a terrible speller and I can't do two things at once. So if I misspell anything, y'all just laugh at me and it's fine. Overly vague, yep. Or incredibly detailed. What else? Hyperlinks. Can somebody explain what a hyperlink is?
Connecting to another part of the Bible, like a verse or something. Stories connecting.
Where do we see a hyperlink like in real life, like today?
Internet.
Okay, in the internet. So like if anybody's ever like opened a PDF or had a PDF on their phone, you'll see, and I'm writing this in blue on purpose, you'll see like a little blue word or something, maybe underlined, and if you click that, it takes you to something, right? So this is kind of a modern day understanding of like what the Bible is trying to do here. It's trying to link different narratives or events together on purpose because this is where you're going to get where this complexity and this beautiful literature is happening. And you're going to start to see that in hyperlinks. Now, hyperlinks and cross-references are not the same thing. They work together, but they're not the same thing. Okay? And we'll get into that a little bit more as we keep going. Anybody else remember any of these other ones? Hard right turns. These are my favorite ones, right? This is the duck, 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 goose thing, right? Yep. Duck, duck, goose, right? It's that this is the generation of so-and-so. He lived to have so many kids, and he lived to be so-and-so long, and then he died. And this is the next, he married and had so many kids, and he lived and he died. And this is the next one, and he had lived and had so many kids, and he lived and died. And this is the next one, and he walked with God all the days of his life, and then God took him. And you're like, Goose, what just happened? And the next verse is, and this is, he had so many kids, and he lived so-and-so and died. You're like, whoa, 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 let's go back to this. What do you mean Enoch lived so long and God took him? Like, can we go back to that? Because you kind of forgot some stuff, right? Hard right turns, yep. Any others that you remember? We're really testing you here. There's really only one. Yep. We're looking for themes or patterns. Now, before you go Googling, like, hey, where did Adam steal all this? You're not going to find this. This is the Adam made up stuff. This is not the only way to study the Bible. I'm just going to tell you that. There's a billion amazing ways to study the Bible. This is just like through lots of work with the students and stuff. This is kind of the easiest way that I can remember, hey, this is how you're going to discover the author is winking at you. If you remember in the last class, you'll remember this. This is when the author's going, hey, you should stop for a second. You should stop for a second. Just stop. Don't read on. Stop. Right? And it's trying to link these different events, these different narratives. And once you discover that through these little clues, right? What should you do? Once you start to see that there's a bunch of repeating words in a small amount of section, or hard right turns, or there's themes and patterns that you've recognized now, what should you do? Hold on. This will give it away.
Slow down.
Stop.
Juxtapose. That's good. Stop. Yes, stop for sure. My students will get this, and my 1825 students will as well, because for some reason this became the visualization of, okay, here's the Joseph narrative. It's linking to a whole other narrative that we should stop and we should juxtapose those two narratives together and look at where the differences are. Because the way Hebrew literature works is it's going to duck, 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 goose, and it's going to be in that goose that you're going, oh, that's what he wanted us to see, right? And I'm going to prove this just a little bit to you, just because what we're going to do is we're not going to get into the typical fashion. We're not going to get into the Joseph narrative tonight. I know, everybody's so like, no, imagine that. We're not actually going to, yeah. Because the Joseph narrative is a just work of just art. Like anybody who is an English major or a literature person, you're going to look at this, especially if you're even remotely interested in the Bible, you're going to look at this like, this thing is amazing. Like it is like, you can tell that it's undeniable that God had his hands all up in this narrative. And the way that they're doing this, and the way you're going to discover that is through these things. And so what we need to do is we need to go back and cover from Genesis 1 to Genesis 36. And we have 35 minutes. Okay, so ready to go. No. We need to do that because we have to read this beautiful piece of art through the eyes of all the stuff that was set up at this point. The reason we didn't start in Genesis 1, by the way, instead of it being a Genesis 1 class, is hopefully that's to come, actually. We would like to do a class in the future where it's Genesis. I'm pandering another class on you already, so that's how I continue to have a job, hopefully, if I can finish you early. So let's go back and let's start to think, and I want you to read this through the lens of like what you know about the Joseph narrative kind of things, and we're going to kind of pick out some of the pieces that you think may be somewhat interesting to keep in mind as we read this Joseph narrative starting next week. Does that sound good? Okay, we got 25 minutes to get through a lifetime of information. Okay, so let's strap on. Okay, Genesis chapter 1. What is Genesis chapter 1 about? Creation. Everybody's got that, right? Now, everybody, when you think of creation, what kind of things come to mind?
Adam and Eve.
Okay, Adam and Eve.
Animals.
Eve. Okay, animals, garden.
Lilith.
None of those are in Genesis chapter 1, but feel free to turn to your Bibles, by the way.
It's just the creation. 6 days.
6 days. Yep. Darkness, light.
Water.
Water.
Boyd.
What's that? Boy?
Boyd.
What do you say?
Sea monster.
Sea monster, the tannin. The tannin, yes, sea monsters. Yeah, okay. Some of you who are new to this class are going, what in the world are you talking about, right? There's some backstory behind that. It's okay. So, if you could sum everything up, would you sum it up to creation? Is that kind of what you would sum it up? Everything up into Genesis 1, creation? Kind of? How about order from chaos? The point of Genesis 1 is God's creating. He's bringing out of chaos order. Now, we could spend a lifetime on Genesis 1. We won't, right? But when he creates, on day 6, what does he create? Anybody remember? Pop quiz all the way back to Sunday school.
Animals and man.
Animals and man. It's a 2-part creation, right? So we have animals and man. Which one was created first? Do you remember? Okay, so this is first. This is important. Not just any animals, too. Like, it specifically labels out some of the animals. Does anybody remember? Okay, yep. So the birds. The great sea creatures. Okay, the livestock. Many of you will see beasts of the field. If you've seen that in that translation. The beasts of the field. Hint, hint. I wonder if beasts of the field is going to come into play anytime soon. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. Beasts of the field. Everybody say beasts of the field.
Beasts of the field.
Right? Let's keep that in mind. Now he creates man. Whole rabbit hole I'm going to step around there. Does he create Adam and Eve then? I don't know. We can talk about that on a Tuesday at noon if you want to. But you would say on the second part of day 6, he creates man. Now, man is special. Man is the first, hands-on part of creation. He creates them, right? Anybody remember how he creates them? Out of the dust. And very specifically, what are they to look like? His image, right? We're going to be created in his image. This is the literal word for statue. In the early days, in the ancient Near East, the statue, the image, was the embodiment of the gods. In other words, it would take on and represent the characteristics of the greater being, whatever it may be. Which is why you see, have no other God before me, and make no other wooden carven image out of it. Why? Why should we not do that? Because we are literally those for him. We are the representation on this earth, the statue of the greater God, of God, right? Okay, so moving on. Genesis chapter 2, right? Oh, wait. Very important, though. Man is given a specific marching order, specific position. What would that position be? Right. So they're supposed to rule. What are they supposed to rule? The beast, the garden, the animals, creation. We're supposed to continue God's creative work of bringing order from chaos here on earth. We're supposed to do that as rulers. It's supposed to submit to us. We're supposed to have dominion here. However, this is not the only time that ruling has been talked about in Genesis chapter 1. Do you remember the other time that ruling is talked about in Genesis chapter 1? Yes. The greater and lesser light to rule the skies. Okay, so now we read that and we're like, it's poetic language about the sun being up there and the moon being up there. But every other time in Scripture it talks about the sun or the moon or the stars, it's always an embodiment. It represents a heavenly creation. The heavens, they're set up there for signs and seasons. Think about Revelation. The third of the stars are flung to the earth, right? They're always embodiments of the heavenly creation. So if that is the case in all of Scripture, then you have to look at the skies, the heavens, and we're supposed to see that God partners with his creation in the heavens, and gives them order, just like he does man. And he places us above, according to Paul, he places us above that heavenly creation. We are to judge angels, right? Like we're just a little lesser. What's that psalm, right? Who are we? What's the rest of it? Somebody catch the rest of it. Who am I that... I know, I'm thinking of the song now. Huh?
Who am I that you are mindful of?
Yeah, you are mindful of us. Yes, exactly, right. So man, in this sense, is set to rule here. The heavens are where the stars or the greater, the heavenly beings, whatever you want to call them, the angels, his realm are, and it's kind of a picture of God creating everything, the cosmos and the earth. Okay, Genesis chapter 2. What's in Genesis chapter 2?
The plant.
Yeah. we're going to zoom in to a land called Eden where he is going to plant a garden and form Adam and Eve, right? And they're going to be given specific tasks, and they are to work the garden, they are to name the beasts, the animals, they're to have to do all that, right? There's more to that, and we're going to skip over it a little bit, though, right?
And it says it in chapter 2 again.
Do what?
She just figured out the whole chapter 1 versus chapter 2 thing going on.
Yes, if you there's a break. Genesis chapter 2, verse 3 is like actually should have where chapter 2 started. Unfortunately, we missed it. The chaptering and numbering is amazing usually, but unfortunately they kind of missed that point because it starts with, in the beginning God created what's up there and down here, and then at the end of, or at the beginning of chapter 2 it says, thus were the creations of what's up there and what's down here. That's the bookend, right? That's how you know, okay, that part's done. So now we're going to go into Genesis chapter 2. We're going to be talking about the garden. Another rabbit hole we could get into if you wanted to on a Tuesday, okay? So he forms man. He breathes life into him. He gives them all the animals. He allows Adam to name all the animals, right? But after he's done naming all the animals, guess what? There's no helper for him. Like none of those animals were the right fit. So now he's going to put him to sleep. He's going to pull the rib, create Eve. Oh, alas, Eve, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, right? Now, Genesis chapter 3, everybody kind of knows what happens here, right? Who are we introduced to? The serpent, right? The Nakash. Now, this serpent are compared to something. Do you recall at the beginning of chapter 3 what the serpent is compared to? You know?
Wild animals.
Evil. Oh, okay. Wild animals. In other words, the beasts of the field. So it says, is more arum, more crafty than all the beasts of the field. So immediately what's happening now is the Hebrew author, Moses, whomever, is sitting here going, by the way, you should associate this thing with this thing. And this is going to become important, I promise you, right? But this thing is also going to be a play on words, which, again, rabbit hole, we're going to step around. It's so, I hope you know how difficult it is for me not to just want to dive into every one of these little details, right? This is going to be compared to this, but this is also, does anybody believe this is just an actual snake? No. Who do we believe this is according to the New Testament? Satan, right? The Satan, Satan. Okay, and is Satan just a snake? Nope, he's a heavenly being, right? And if he's a heavenly being, then he is set to rule up there. But right now, we're not up there and down here. We are where up there and down here meets. Right? We are in heaven. We are in the new Eden. We are in the new heavens, the new earth, basically, of how Revelations will end, right? Revelation will end, right? And so we have to read this through these eyes because he's going to play multiple things here. This is both an animal, a beast of the field, but it's also going to be a creature of a heavenly being, part of God's counsel, the Nakash, right? If you remember that, if you'll keep this word in your mind, this will really make things glow later on in your studies. The Nakash. Now, the serpent, we know what happens, right? Tempts Eve. Eve falls. Adam falls. God's wandering. They realize they're what immediately? They realize they're naked. They're naked, right? Anybody ever think about why naked? Like why is that the thing?
Use your vulnerable.
It's the most vulnerable state, right? That's why everyone has that nightmare where they're naked in front of a class, right? Or whatever it may be, right? That's the most vulnerable you're possibly going to be with somebody. Which is why when you're married and you become intimate with that partner, you're vulnerable. You're allowing that vulnerability to happen. But the problem is, if I'm vulnerable and I know you're also vulnerable, guess what I can do? I can take advantage of that vulnerability. That's the whole Bible. That's today. That's literally today. That's man deciding that my vulnerabilities is lesser than yours, and I'm going to take advantage of yours. So your vulnerability has now become my strength, right? So you can just see how every little tiny detail is jam-packed in here on purpose because it's teaching us stuff that's still going to be really, really popular still today. So we get the serpent. What's the result of the fall? They're naked. What else? Okay, you're cast out. Okay. Separation. What's the woman going to have to endure? Pain in childbirth. What does that mean?
Physical pain?
It's a good question. Is it about physical pain? Does that mean if in modern days when we're in the hospital and my wife is about to give birth and I'm panicking, white-faced, and about to pass out, that she would be going against God if she took that epidural?
No.
No. So have we outsmarted God?
Now, God allowed that epidural.
God allowed that epidural. I would submit to you that it has nothing to do with the pain. The pain is obviously a result of sin. That's going to happen. The physical body is going to experience pain it shouldn't experience. Just like the sweat of the brow working in the ground. That's another result of the fall. What I would submit to you is that in childbearing, it's going to become painful. Now, how many in this room know somebody who has struggled with a loss of a child? Couldn't get pregnant, maybe, and that was devastating for them. Or you had kids, and your kids like end up nothing like you, and end up falling down a beaten path that they should not have, and they are excommunicated from family. Anybody in here ever know anybody like that in there? Yeah. I would submit to you that it's not about the pain in the childbirth, but in childbearing. It's going to cause struggles. Those struggles may look different for everybody, but that's important to understand because now, why is the seed of a woman going to become very important? One day, this issue right here, which is going to nip and cause tensions in your children and in your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and whatever. He's going to cause lots and lots of issues in family and church and people that you love. But one day, a seed, an offspring of the woman, will crush the serpent. He will defeat that completely. Now that's important because if you're in the ancient Near East, you're reading this scroll or you're having this scroll read to you aloud, and you meet the next character in the Bible, Noah, what are you immediately hoping he's going to be? The serpent crusher. Right? We hope this is the one that's going to take care of it. Which is important because now every person that you're going to read in the Bible, you're filtering him through previous given ideas. We still do that today. When you think of the Antichrist and the beast and the things that are to come, I mean, how many times have you heard, like, so-and-so must be the Antichrist? We've got to be near the end times. Like, he fits all of these, categories. They're doing the same thing here with every character that's given. Maybe this is the one, right? So when you now read the next block of narratives here, we're going to go from the serpent, then we're going to be cast out. First of all, we're going to see the very first seed of the woman. And the first seed of the woman is? Cain and Abel, right? Who's older? Anybody remember?
Cain.
Right. Okay, this is important to remember. And what happens? What unfolds? Cain, Abel. Abel is Havel. Abel is meaningless. It's the word that Solomon will use later on when he says meaningless, all is meaningless. It's Havel. It's literally grasping at the wind. That's what the picture is, right? Why is that? Well, Abel, his life was like, he's gone, right? Why? Jealousy of what?
Abel had favor with God.
Right. A father showed favor to the younger sibling. Older sibling gets jealous, kills sibling. Before he kills him, he's given a warning, though. Anybody remember that warning? We're in Genesis chapter 4, by the way, if you're following along. I hear some mumbling. I'm very deaf, by the way. I'll just read it. Cain, but for Cain, his offering, God had no regard. We're in 4 verse 5. Now verse 6. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And then what's the next verse say? If you don't sin, hey, by the way, there's this thing at the door. What door? Where? Ooh, that's good. Yeah. I would submit that we are where in this position here? Are we in the garden anymore?
No.
Are we in Eden anymore?
No.
Where does Cain get cast out away from? East of Eden. So I would submit they're on the outside of the garden. They can't get back to this garden anymore, but they're still in this region of Eden, right? And now there's something that's here at the door, right? If you don't, sin, right? Sin is now crouching at the door. We're going to get this animalistic version, this beastly idea, this beastly serpent-like picture of something that wants to devour you, right? Its desire is contrary to you. You must what? You have to rule over this beast. If you don't rule over this beast like the creation has told you, it's going to be contrary to you. It's going to devour you, right? Now, go wander. Wander Cain. Now, that's a joke. Wander Cain. Go wander Cain. What does Cain do?
Settles.
He settles immediately. Builds a city. Great job, Cain. I wonder if that's going to come back to haunt us one day. Thank you for laughing at that. Okay. Moving on. Now, don't worry. They had another kid. They had lots of kids, but we only care about one, apparently. So, all right. So now we're in Genesis chapter 5. We're going to keep going from here. We're going to go 5 to 10. This is a whole block of narratives, right? And within this block of narratives, what kind of things do we see? A whole lot, by the way.
Sons of God.
Okay. Thank you. We see, he said giants in, okay, Genesis chapter 5. In those days, when men began to multiply in the earth, you're thinking of, oh, this is the blessing of God. God's blessing them. Be fruitful, multiply. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to. And daughters are born to them. The sons of God see that the daughters of men were beautiful, just like Eve saw that the fruit was beautiful, and she desired it in her heart, and so she took it, and it resulted in death. Now we have sons of God characters, depending on whether you think this is the line of Seth, or these are actually a cosmic rebellion where actual heavenly beings who now want to subvert the authority that God gave man are going to come down and try to, let me put it this way. If you are Satan and you know for a fact that one day the seed of a woman is going to crush your head, what's the best way you could possibly make sure that doesn't happen? Corrupt the seed. That's a rabbit hole. Join me at noon on Tuesdays. We'll just plant that in there and we'll go on, right? So what we see, if you take that view, and these kids are going to be the men of renown, the mighty men, the Gibor, the Nephilim, right? These guys, these mighty beast warrior things that are like, oh, they're going to be known. In every culture around Israel whose culture came from the mighty ones, the men of renown, Babylon, that's what they're known for. Their kings are the descendants of the gods. Now, Moses or the Hebrew authors are going to sit here and go, you say that's great, but you want to know what it actually ended in? Every intention of man's heart is evilness continually, and God just had to mass extinction event wipe everything clean. And you go, all those things you think are good were horrible. It is somebody taking advantage of the shame and of the other individual, right? The vulnerability of the other individual. So then you're going to get the flood. You're going to get the first picture of the righteous, blameless one, and those with whom are connected to him will go through the waters of the chaos, decreation, into a new creation, into a new Eden on a new mountain, and he's going to get off and he's going to sacrifice an animal. It's going to be a pleasing aroma to God, and God's going to go, I will never flood the earth again, for now I know that every intention of man's heart is evil continuously. The way it starts is also the way it ends, which is very important for you to understand, because you're supposed to go, but Noah just did everything right. And he was righteous and blameless before. I don't understand. Why now do you know this again? Tuck that away. So then what's he do? He plants a garden, sees the fruit, partakes in it, ends up naked. And you're going, not again! We just went through this. Right? So what you're going to see is you're going to see in the garden, you're going to see man and heavenly cosmic rebellion. Then you're going to get down here into the Noah, and you're going to see man and a cosmic rebellion. And then you're going to get down to the next narrative, right? And we're going to get to Babel. We're recreating. Everyone's going to join up in the east. We're going to build up this thing. We're going to make our name great. And the founder of Babel, guess who he is? Nimrod. Nimrod is known as a
Man of renown.
Man of renown. A mighty one. An offspring of this thing that we saw start the flood, right? So now you're going to see cosmic rebellion, man rebellion, and what does God have to do? He comes down to him separates them, confuses their language. Now, now we're going to meet the next one with whom's name is going to be made great. But this time it's going to be done the right way. Who is he? Abram. Abram, come out of this Babylon. Come out of Babylon. Come to this land that I'm going to give to you one day. I'm going to make a promise to you. What's that promise? I'm going to make your name great. Yeah. Look at the stars. See if you can count them. You know all those things? Yeah, your descendants are going to be greater than that. Right? You're going to have this land. People who bless you will be blessed. People who curse you will be cursed. And then you're going to watch how every misstep of Abram and Abraham is going to be Abram trying to get those things that God promised him on his own. He's going to try to get land that God promised him, and it's going to cause him a lot of issues. He's going to try to get a child on his own. It's going to cause him a lot of issues. And you're sitting here going, did you not listen to God at all? Like, he literally just told you this, and you could just hold off for a second, right? But that's the story that's unfolding. Man trying to go about it their own way because they have that knowledge of what is right and wrong. And thank God, God is so merciful that now that we have that same knowledge of what is right and wrong, he removed us from being able to live forever. Think about what he says when they leave the garden. Now that man is like us, knowing right from wrong, they have to be removed from the tree of life, the access of the tree of life. It's an act of mercy being moved. But before they get removed, there's one thing I missed. What did he do right before he sent them outside of the garden? Yep, we see the very first picture of a shed blood of an animal that will cover the multitudes of sin. Cover the vulnerability of man. That's going to be a theme, a pattern, right? Moving on from Abram, we get Abram. He's going to get married. He's got Sarai, right, or Sarah. They're going to have one kid through an Egyptian foreigner who's going to live with them in Canaan, and they're going to have a kid. And what's that kid's name? Ishmael, and he's the firstborn, correct?
Yes.
And then they're going to have another child. Who's that? Isaac. And Isaac is the younger one, right? And who's the favored one? So how many younger siblings do we have in here? Anybody? Congratulations. It bodes well for you in the Bible, just so you know. For us older siblings, we always get it didn't stop in Jesus' day. Just go read the prodigal son, okay? But that's a theme you're going to see and understand as it continues on, right? That has a whole meaning behind it, right? Then they're all going to have kids. They're going to separate. Well, first of all, Abram is going to fight over land. He's going to separate with his nephew Lot, right? And they're going to be shepherds. That's going to be important to understand as well. Then we're going to Ishmael and Isaac, and Ishmael's going to be sent out into the wilderness to die, and then he's going to be saved. And but then God's going to have to make a great nation out of him because he promised that the seed of Abram is going to be the one's a great nation. So that's going to be a whole storyline. Isaac's going to be, you know the story, the Sadiq, the sacrifice up on Mount Moriah. You're going to see God's rewarding Abraham's faithfulness with Isaac, right? Then Isaac's going to have kids. Who is his kid? Okay. Esau is the older or younger? Older. Right. Jacob is also born at the same time, but he's known for he's known hilariously for doing what when at birth? Yeah, he's literally grasping the heel of Esau, right? I wonder if tripping up people are going to become a theme in Jacob's life, right? And this is when you read the Bible and you go, "This is so silly. Like, why is this foot thing in here? This overly detailed thing?" Yeah, he's going to be literally the one who was tripping everyone up. He's going to be named Jacob, the heel grabber, right? And we're going to see who gets the blessing from the father. Jacob. But was he supposed to get the blessing from the father? No. How does he get the blessing of the father? Deception. So now we're going to see again a man who is going to who does not rule the serpent, but gives into that temptation and deceives. Which is funny because who is the man of the field? Esau. And serpent, more crafty than the beasts of the field. You can see that you're reading these stories going, oh, he should be the one who's the deceptive, the warrior, the bad one, the one who doesn't control his sin. He's the man of the field. Literally smells like the field, right? It's the author going, hey. He's the man of the field. Hey. He's the beast one. He's hairy. He's beastly. Ha. But then we're going to see, little mama's boy Jacob is going to do the deceiving. And you're going, well, that broke. That's a goose. That broke the pattern. Well, now I don't know what to do with this. You're going, that didn't work out the way I thought it was going to at all, right? And you're going to see in between these pictures, you're going to see another cosmic rebellion. What's the other cosmic rebellion? Anybody remember? There's a destruction that takes place where Abraham gets to stand in and give another glimpse of this Messiah figure, the seed of the woman, who may crush serpent, when he stands boldly before the angel of the Lord and says, don't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. What if we find 50, 40, 30, 20, 10? And every time the angel of the Lord's like, yep. And the two angelic beings who are with the angel of the Lord go into Sodom. And where do they go? Into Lot's house. By the way, this is a rabbit hole, but Abraham, get up. Leave your people. Leave your country. Leave everybody. Leave them and go to this land. So what does Abraham do? Come on, Lot. I wonder if that's going to cause him any problems later, right? Oh, yeah, sure. Lot's now in Sodom, and now there's two angelic beings that are in Lot's house. And who's on the outside of the door acting like a beast? The men who are banging at the door saying, we want those two men that came in there. Let them come out so that we may know them. And you're going, oh, my goodness. This is like, it's just too much all jam-packed in these little tiny verses, right? So now Jacob, he's going to go, and he's going to live, he's going to have some kids, right? And later on, the one who's going to live and die by the sword, according to the blessing of his father, don't you have anything left for me, right? And he's like, oh, you're going to live and die by the sword, you're going to serve others, right? Now Jacob's going to have a reuniting of Esau, and what happens? He's prepared. He's like, oh, here we go, because he took off running. Remember, he gets deceived. The deceiver is now going to be the one who's deceived by his own father-in-law when he's like, oh, look at that beautiful Rachel. Not droopy-eyed Leah. You stay over in that corner, droopy-eyed Leah. Okay, you just stay there. And what's he going to do? He's going to get deceived by the father-in-law. And he's going to marry Leah, have kids, and then Rachel, the one he loves, is going to have kids too. But not many, and it's going to be real struggle. Pain and childbearing, right? The seed of the woman, seed of the woman, seed of the woman. You're seeing this, right? And so now what's going to happen is he's going to meet back up with Esau, and Esau's going to come running at him, and Jacob's going to be like, oh no, I'm about to die. And what's he do? The beast of the field who ruled over that sin and gave up on the forgiveness and didn't want to kill him, showed the forgiveness now. And you're going, goose! That's different. And it's important that you understand all these little tiny, minute little details. This is not even scratching the surface of all this stuff that's jam-packed in all this. Because when we go and we read the Joseph narrative, do you think that any of these little themes and patterns and stuff are going to be involved in it? Yes. Yeah, literally like every single line. And every single line of this narrative that we're about to read, you're going to start reading it through the eyes of this. And you're going to suddenly see something like, I don't know, somebody's going to be sent out to wander in a field. Joseph, go, find your brothers. They're out there in the field. And you're going, oh no. What happened in the field to the favorite son? That's not good, right? And he's wandering in the field, and they find him, and the brothers aren't there. And we'll get into all that. But you're going to start to see the beast start to show its ugly head. And the beast is going to show its ugly head in the brothers. And there's going to be hard right turns that you're going, what in the world does it have to do anything? But it's going to be so intentional because what's happening now is the scene has been set. And this scroll is about to be completed. And the longest narrative that takes place here. And it's going to take every single line and it's going to start to tell a different story than you're expecting. And it's not a story about a coat. Right? It's not a story about broken brothers who decide to sell their brother into slavery. It's not a story about Egypt. It's a story that's being written that shows us something amazing that I'm not going to give away because I want you to come back next week. So at this time, we got about 5 minutes left. I want to open the floor for any questions. I know this turned into a lecture. It won't be like this from now on. I had to set this in. Any thoughts, clarifications, things that just stood out to you like, oh, I never thought of it like that before?
So the Nephilim, was that a second rebellion in heaven, or was that, I never considered
The
that
picture
before.
you're seeing now is a pattern. What you're going to see is a pattern that's being set where you're going to have a folly rebellion. In other words, like Adam and Eve, they they don't know right from wrong. They're told it, but they're sort of like written as almost like children kind of discovering that they did something wrong, right? I ate this. I shouldn't have ate that Oreo last night when mom and dad weren't looking, right? Dang it, I knew I shouldn't have, right? And then what you're going to see is the next generation is going to amplify the issue. So you're going to get Cain and Abel. And then you're going to get a cosmic rebellion, where now not only man, but cosmically man and the rest of God's creation is also going to rebel. And then he's going to wipe everything clean, and you're going to get the folly fall. Oh, Noah got drunk, laid in a tent naked, whatever, right? And then you're going to get the next generation is going to amplify the problem, right? Which is a whole story we won't get into right now, but Ham is going to be an issue. It's going to cause more cursedness. It's going to cause more corruption. It's going to cause more nations that will rise up and become the big players in the stories or narratives to come, the events to come, right? And then you're going to see, again, he's going to wipe it all clean. Here's Babel, boom, right? But then you're going to get a cosmic rebellion, or the cosmic rebellion is Babel. He's going to wipe it all clean. He's going to zoom into Abraham. And you're seeing a pattern that's being set up where you've got man falls, next generation amplifies the problem, cosmic rebellion continues, and God has to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Then man falls. Now we're going to amplify even more. Now not only is there going to be 2 sons, there'll be 12 of them. And 12 of them are going to make this even worse. But the point of the Joseph narrative is not that God just, or that his father, Jacob, actually loved Joseph more. The point is what God's doing in all of this. Right? Because what we're going to see is Joseph becomes kind of a passive player in this, right? I mean, how many have heard like messages and sermons, which is true, messages and sermons where Joseph is like, remaining faithful in the pit. Right? If we remain faithful, God's going to elevate us up one day to, second in command, right? Right? I mean, you hear these narratives, you read these through this picture, but it's almost like, no, the point isn't that. Right? Because the second you begin to go, okay, how morally should I act looking at these individuals here? You read the Joseph narrative and you go, well, obviously I should never sell my sibling into slavery, no matter how much I want to do that, right? Obviously not. Except what happens in return when that occurs? It leads to the salvation of Egypt, the whole world, and his brothers. So can you really argue that you shouldn't have done that? And it's supposed to be this paradigm where you're going, I don't know what's up and down here. Like, I don't know what's right. Because that's where we're going to discover God go, yeah, you don't. I told you that in the beginning. I didn't want to withhold the knowledge of what's right and wrong. I wanted you to get it from the right source. And every moment that our lives go about trying to take what we see as delightful and delectable and good for us doesn't always mean it's actually that. It may cause us more harm than we realize. But luckily, God knows what's happening, and we'll discover throughout this story, he's going to continually set the scene up for both Israel, which you know the next book. What's the next book? After Genesis.
Exodus.
You know what happens here. We've got to get the setup here. We need to be reading while we're in slavery in Egypt that, oh, don't worry, even though it seems chaos, God's still in control. And that's what we get out of this. And so, as we read this, your job now is to go home. I want you to read Genesis chapter 37. You can do a light reading, you can do deep reading, whatever you want to do, because we're going to come in and we're going to do it together. And we're going to start to look through the eyes of these scenes here. Okay? I'm going to put my number up here as well, because I know if you begin to read and you're just lost or you have no idea what I'm talking about half the time, please feel free to call, text anytime. Like, it's literally my favorite thing to do is talk about the Bible. And so please feel free to do that. Any last questions, concerns, thoughts before we close? Are you all excited about this journey?
Oh, yes.
Good, I hope so. Because this is going to be amazing. And we get to spend time discovering who the Word is and what the Word is doing and how it ultimately affects our lives. All right, let me pray for us, and then I'll hang around. If you got questions, we can stay and talk. God, thank you so much for just the amount of you that you have placed in the Word for us to discover. God, I'm thankful that we get to spend a lifetime, like Psalm 1 says, meditating on this day and night and discovering new things every single time that we read it. But God, I pray that we don't just settle for the surface level reading, but that we will begin to discover the deep and rich and amazing complexity that this word has to offer. Because as we do that, it's more depth and complexity that we add in our relationship with you. So God, I pray that you be with each one of us as we go on, birth in us a desire to just jump in, to begin to read, to look for these clues, these winks, these whatever words we choose to describe it as. But God, I pray that as we go on this journey together, that we end up in a different place than we've ever been. And that different place is just a deeper relationship with you. Father, we love you and we praise you.